All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Thanks for coming. This is a panel on how intelligence sharing increases cyber resilience. I am Marc, the moderator. I'd like to officially welcome you here. It was going to be the last panel of the day, and we were going to be the only people standing between you and a much-needed glass of wine. However, the Ukrainians, as creative and innovative as they are, they've swooped in a surprising and audacious move and taken our prime closing spot for their own, faster than you can burn down a Russian strategic bomber. So the Ukrainians, or maybe 40 Russian strategic bombers, for those of you who haven't heard, because that's the only way the joke works, is that yesterday they launched a drone attack, an audacious drone attack, and hit a number of different military posts, destroying up to 40 strategic bombers. They weren't hitting government or schools or hospitals or other cowardly attacks like the other member state in that conflict. So apparently they did have some cards left to play. I applaud them for playing them well. And I think all of us can say that we continue supporting their fight to save their country from this illegal invasion. That has absolutely nothing to do with this panel. I just thought that, because we are going to be followed by the Ukrainians, that we would give them an ode to their success on the battlefield when they have them. Oh, that's a good idea. Everybody silence yourself. Yeah, I'll do it too. So I've been assisting Sebastian and his team for about 3 years with this conference, also with the French Cyber Task Force when they come to Washington. I'm honored to moderate today's discussion with a great group of leaders from government, the Ministry of Justice, and the private sector. As the cyber threat landscape grows more aggressive and transnational, whether it's ransomware, espionage campaigns, critical infrastructure intrusions, the need for real-time cross-border intelligence sharing is urgent. In fact, it's never been more urgent. Today's panelists bring unique perspectives on this challenge, from operational coordination across Europe to legal frameworks within national justice systems, and how the private sector collects, consumes, and shares threat intelligence. To briefly introduce them, we have Ms. Johanna Brousse, Vice Prosecutor and Head of Cybercrime Section at France's Ministry of Justice. We have Major General Jean-Philippe Lecouffe, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Operations at Europol. We have Mr. Raphaël Marichez, I'm sorry if I didn't get that right, Chief Security Officer for France and Southern Europe for Palo Alto Networks. And then Mr. Peter Sund, who is the CEO of the Finnish Information Security Cluster. Thank you all for being here, and let's dive in. Johanna, let's start with you. Why is the intelligence flow, why is intelligence flow within the French justice system critical for responding to cybercrime, and how does it support victims? Should be on.
Hello. The Cybercrime Unit of the Paris Prosecution Office has a national jurisdiction for all cyber attacks. We deal with all the attacks at the upper end of the spectrum. This includes, for example, ransomware attacks, uncooperative platforms, cyber attacks for espionage purposes, sabotage of cyber infrastructures, and foreign digital interference. To deal with this type of case, the Cybercrime Unit relies not only on the police or on the gendarmerie, but also on the entire French cyber ecosystem. We work with the intelligence services, the French Cybersecurity Agency, university, and trusted private companies. For example, we were able to dismantle a botnet last year with the help of a private company, a French company called Sequoia. This botnet, PlugX, was used for espionage purposes. We were also able to develop a trap with, thanks to the University of Lorraine. For us, it's really important. If we want to be effective in the fight against cybercrime, we have to learn to work together and not to remain in our own swimming lane. To carry out its mission, the cyber unit has built a vast network of international partners. For instance, last year we sent out over 200 mutual legal assistants in the world. We are forging very close links with our foreign counterpart. We are fortunate to be able to rely on Eurojust. I'm sure you know Eurojust, but just to precise, Eurojust is a coordination instance for magistrates. The Cyber Prosecutor's Office has several means of obstructions. First of all, of course, we can arrest the suspect, it's our first mission, and imprison them. If the perpetrators of cyber attacks are located abroad, we can issue arrest warrant to obtain their extradition to France. And if the suspect is in an uncooperative country, this arrest warrant will restrict his freedom of movement. So that's really important for us. But we have also other means of obstruction. One of them is to dismantle cyber infrastructures. Last year and this year, we took part with Europol in a famous operation, Endgame. Maybe you have heard about this operation because it was really huge. This operation carried out with several countries had the aim to dismantle botnet and to arrest suspects in Ukraine, in Armenia, in other European countries. We are also taking direct action against uncooperative platforms, which allow crimes to proliferate. Maybe you've heard about Telegram. And the prosecutor has also an option to seize criminal assets to hinder the action of the attackers. For instance, we hacked the Russian cryptocurrency exchanger Bizlato 2 years ago. And at this occasion, we seized the exchanger's working capital. This represented 20 million euros at the time. Now it's a bit more because, of course, the price of bitcoins has increased. And finally, I would like to say that justice can serve as a diplomatic lever by sending a request for mutual legal assistance to the country behind the attack. This is a way to let them know that we know they are behind the attack. It's a diplomatic warning sent by the justice channel. We have used this method during the Olympic Games, for instance. That's why to carry out our missions, we need to have information from all French services, from all foreign services, and from the private sector, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll ask you later if you also do red notices. But no, now. General Lecouffe, how does Europol, given your huge area of operations, how do you coordinate this threat data across member states?
Well, thank you first for inviting me to this panel. As you know, Europol is the criminal information hub of the EU. So coordination is really in our DNA. And especially if we speak about cyber, our European Cybercrime Center, Edward, as the head of the center, is here. He can talk about it also. We try, in fact, to gather cyber criminal intelligence and to make the best of it. Especially what we do is that we receive this information. We try also to deconflict this information, because it was said in the previous panel just when I arrived, saying that a lot of information is coming and sometimes it's a bit of noise, so you have to detect what are the relevant information in all the information that can come to you. So it's things that you try to do, deconflict, but also coordinate and prioritize to see within the member states how we can organize the work in the best possible way, in order that we don't duplicate efforts and that we don't leave gaps somewhere in this. Once we see that some cases are possible or mature, then we can, with the core law enforcement agencies that are working on this case, we can organize in Europol what we call sprints, That is to say, we gather in the same room for 1 week, often all the people working on the same threat, and trying to exchange information. It can be technical, it can be operational, it can be looking for additional information, it can be also finding the infrastructure, following the money, the cryptocurrencies, and so on, and to try to, in fact, make a big step forward to the investigation. We have also built, with the help of our member states and some other partners, a key tool that is sheltered in Europol, that we have in Europol, which is called the GCAT. The GCAT stands for Joint Cyber Action Task Force. It's where, in fact, all relevant law enforcement agencies can bring actionable operational information. And they have an exchange, they meet every week, they work in an open space so they can exchange information. It's the service that we provide at Europol. They can exchange information and build cases. We also proactively try to detect any massive exploitation of vulnerabilities or new modus operandi tactics or techniques of criminals. And if we see that from the front line that these tactics are used, then we can really publish kind of security advisory, joint security advisory statements to say, well, be careful. And we do that. We did that in the past, for example, last year with US FBI, with ENISA, with US CISA, in order to prevent this attack to happen. We also work very closely with our sisters agencies in the EU, especially CERT-EU, ENISA, but also the External Action Service of the EU, because there's an external part in this threat, and also with the private sectors. And in EC3, we have 4 advisory group where we have members of private sectors that can collaborate with us, try to find what are the new trends, what are the early warnings, how we can make risk indicators and so on, in order to organize a little bit at EU level the work of the member states, and in order that they cannot lose too much resources and time on things that are done elsewhere, and to organize their work. Everything is based, for sure, because we are only a supporting agency, on what the member states wants to do. They have the initiative of investigation, they have the initiative with the prosecutor, especially to decide about where they want to go, the way they want, the strategy they want to put in place. But we help them to clean a little bit the landscape and to see where we have to put our effort to be the more relevant.
Thank you, General. Peter, in addition to being rated, I think, for 8 years in a row, the happiest country in the world, congratulations. You have a very strong reputation in the cyber intelligence collaboration efforts. What makes that so?
Well, that's an excellent question, but before I jump to that, let me just make sure that it's understood correctly. We usually, as a nation, we settle for less, so that's why we're much more happy. So, there is a proverb in Finland that we often use, which is that the beginning of wisdom is facing the facts, and that is quite often used as a bridge to how we approach issues in general. Firstly, when we talk about information or intelligence, it depends, of course, on the context of usage. Recognizing the fact that cybersecurity-related information or intelligence the sources are actually from companies. So it is the large quantity of various organizations who essentially first acquire this information. So how does that information then be processed into a better use, because the end result hopefully is that via, for example, Europol's processing services. By the way, Europol gets their information, of course, from the member states, from the law enforcement agencies. So how the agencies are receiving the information, it's via criminal reports, essentially. So, and who is doing the criminal reports? So it's the victims of criminal activity, cyber incidents, and so on and so on. Of course, private citizens as well, but organizations are definitely the biggest group in essential. For example, in Finland we have 400,000 companies roughly and 25% of all of them employ other people. So it's quite a lot of computer systems where information is essentially stored. And all of these organizations, when we add the private let's say communities, not companies, but other organizations, that's 150,000 organizations plus. So we're talking about more than 500,000 organizations. All of them are facing cyber incident efforts on an annual basis, roughly around 1 billion times. So in Finland, when we calculate the bad actors trying to activate malicious code or whatever, these kinds of things, we are talking about at least 500 million to 1 billion. I just last week I met the Minister for Institutional Security of Brazil, and learned that their levels of cyber insecurity is 350 billion per year. So it's 10 times more than in Finland. And when my esteemed colleague Anssi was speaking, not the agency, the person, Dr. Anssi, was speaking, he was mentioning that, for example, our National Cybersecurity Center receives 20,000 notifications from organizations and other actors in the society voluntarily per year. So it tells that, of course, the bad actors are much more intensive, of course, with their efforts, but it's still 20,000 voluntary notification. This makes a lot in our ability to actually act on things. Be the result of advisories, be the result of cybersecurity authorities doing something, be the result criminal reports to the law enforcement and so on. So it matters where we begin with. And that is one of the issues that I think in Finland we have got some things correctly.
Thank you, thank you. Raphaël, your company is enormous, and you probably collect and disseminate as much, if not more, threat data than some nations, or most nations perhaps. So how do you do that? How do you bridge that private-public intelligence gaps? Like, how do you fill in, or can you fill in those gaps sometimes?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and that's a very good question. Yeah, you mentioned enormous, I would say, global cybersecurity company, and it's very different in terms of approach and scope that what public agencies, law enforcement forces, even CERT are doing, because each body has a focus on a specific geographic scope or a specific purpose, which is, for example, to put bad people in jail. And we are focused on security of our customers, and I would say independently of the geographics. So we have two types of threat intel gathered on the field. Global telemetry coming from our products, because we are, first of all, a software cybersecurity vendor, so we disseminate products across the globe. And second, I would say human-sourced threat intel. I mean our incident responders on the field, on the front line, gathering some non-automatic but human-made, human-tailored threat intel, what we call field intelligence. And the combination of the two, global telemetry and field intelligence, it provides us with consistent picture of a threat actor. For example, a threat actor who will be acting in different regions of the world, in Latin America, plus in Southeast Asia, for example, while a governmental agency will only focus on their national interest and what is happening within their borders. So it's really a complementary effort where we will provide some intel to governmental agencies. Maybe, I hope, that will help you to anticipate when we see some pre-positioning activities of threat actors in peripheral countries, not targeting first the final goal, but maybe it will come after. And reciprocally, what we expect to gain from partnership between public and private is enhancing our situational awareness, which will in turn make our customers, I hope, more secure, because we will provide our customer with some context situation thanks to the geopolitical context provided by the governmental agencies. And then we come to resilience, which is also the theme of our panel. This is where our action stops, our cybersecurity vendor, but the cybersecurity organization of the customer will act on cyber resilience to anticipate the potential bad impacts on the business, depending on the country, depending on the geographic. So we are a global player, not focused on geographics, but at the end of the day, when it's about to mitigate a business impact, it can be very dependent of the purpose of the threat actor.
Thank you, thank you. Let's go back to our prosecutor from the Justice Department, Ministry of Justice, sorry. How is cybercrime-related intelligence shared between your office and the private sector and vice versa? And how do you do it in a timely manner that supports cybercrime victims all the way from, from breach to arrest, prosecution, and redress?
In France, you have to know that the prosecutor's office doesn't make a public attribution. We only sued perpetrators to the trial court. However, our evidence collected during the investigation may be communicated to the other part of the government responsible for public attributions with our authorization, of course. It's a team effort. To be more precise, we have a provision of the code, in the code of the Criminal Procedure Code, that allows us to share information from judicial cases with other government services. It's a fairly recent text, to be honest, but a very useful one. We regularly transmit procedural elements to intelligence services, for example, and these services must keep that information for internal use only. They are not allowed to share this information with foreign partners, for instance. And conversely, these services share with us different information, and with their consent, we can include this element in the judicial file. It's really a win-win. Regular meetings are held with all the French government services. In fact, the incident response strategy is carried out in consultation with different cyber services from different ministries. Paris Prosecution Office is invited to take part in this discussion when a judicial case is already open or when justice is identified as an efficient lever, if justice can be very useful to respond to a cyber attack. A focus to the victim, that's really important for us, of course. Cybercrime victims have to deal with a crisis, and filing a complaint is not their immediate preoccupation, and I can understand that. They don't want to spend hours in a police station or in a gendarmerie. So we have put in place a solution to enable them to file a complaint quickly and simply. For ransomware cases, for example, they can fill out a form we have created, or they can send us an email, and after the complaint is registered and the investigation can begin. It's really simple. The real question is what victim can expect from the justice system. Our first goal, as I said, is to arrest the hackers and seize criminal assets to compensate the victims. By filing a complaint, victims contribute to the collective effort. If the hackers is arrested, it prevents them from harming other victims. And finally, we have sometimes technical elements in our possession, like description keys for ransomware, so we can help victims to end the crisis. We focus on simplicity and efficiency for support them.
Thank you for that. General Lecouffe, how does Europol improve real-time threat coordination across Europe's diverse systems and countries?
Well, it's a bit also of our regular work, because we are an agency that is done to facilitate and support the investigation throughout not only Europe, because we have a lot of other international partners. We do that in real time because we have some 24/7 possibilities to be reached out.
But how do you, I'm sorry, how do you ensure across those languages, do you leverage autonomy? Because you have a number of different nations to get messages out quickly. How are you able to affect that?
One of the key assets in Europol is the fact that we have liaison officers we are an HQ-based agency based in The Hague. And in The Hague, in our building, we have 300 liaison officers coming from 54 countries in the world. Wow. Not only the 27 member states, but also other law enforcement agencies. You were talking about Brazil, for example. Well, we have the Brazilian Federal Police present with a guy that we know and that we can reach. And when I was talking about the GCAT, in this GCAT, you have cyber specialists, cyber law enforcement officers that are sent to Europol to be part of this GCAT. So our reach can be done first through a face-to-face, because as you know, law enforcement, a lot of things is working by personal knowledge and face-to-face relation. Mm-hmm. And this is the trigger, in fact, to get the information from, so they call back their capital saying there's something happening here, Europol needs information, real time, do you see this and so on, can you send us information? And it's really what we are doing every day. We have also all the systems in place to exchange information. We have our Siena network, which is a secure network of communication where we can communicate, including personal data throughout the world. We have different also bodies that we can coordinate. For example, in the EU, we have the Cyber Crisis Task Force, which is under the lead of DG Connect, but mm-hmm. where we are part of. And we can exchange with cybersecurity world and so on. I was saying that we have a regular meeting with ENISA or CERT-EU. We are all connected in this EU, let's say, ecosystem. So what they get, CERT-EU, for example, what they get from the ANSI in France, they will share with us if there's an interest, and we will be in the loop. So I think really that we have this possibility to try to real-time coordinate things. We also have built, and this was following especially some attacks, we have built an EU law enforcement response protocol that can be activated with the participation of some member states that want. And then we have different steps in this protocol, where we can raise awareness, we can trigger sharing of information on a specific topic or specific attack and so on, that we can use really to exchange and to try to do. For sure it's difficult because, as you said, but it's the challenge that we have in all crime area where we are working. We don't have the same legal framework, we don't speak the same language in Europe, but it's part of the diversity. We have different judicial organization, different law enforcement organization, but it's our new normal. For us, it's the day-to-day work.
Can you give us an example, maybe one of your favorite examples, where this intelligence threat sharing had a positive or a really impressive result? Something that sticks out in your mind, it serve as a good example?
Well, we have plenty of example in the last cases that we really had to support. And for example, one of the last one was this info stealer Luma, which is a collaboration between Microsoft, Europol, the US, Japan. So this is a kind of example, and we have a press release that you can go on our website and see what we have done on this case. We have a lot I have in mind, for example, when last year where we put a blow, I cannot say that but we disrupted for some times the Logbit ransomware, which was a very powerful one. Having nearly half of the market of the, let's say, of the ransomware, where we had cooperation with different law enforcement agencies on both sides of the Atlantic, but also where the victims were given some decryption keys that were prepared by our Japanese colleagues. So this is the kind of things that we do on a regular basis. I wouldn't tell you that it's an easy job. It's sometimes difficult, and it's not every week that we can have this kind of operation. But we have maybe 10 per year at least, and some smaller cases that we have. So each time, I think it really gives the feeling that we can do something. And maybe something that I wanted to add following what you said, we really try to have a holistic approach towards cyber criminals. It's not case by case that we are working. We are working to try, in fact, we have 3 pillars in our action. We try to go after the people, after the guys that are committing these things, the cyber criminals. We try to go about the infrastructure. So we dismantle the infrastructure as soon as we can. It can be a double VPN, it can be an info stealer, it can be a dark web market, it can be anything that can help in dismantling the infrastructure. And the last thing is we try to go for the money, to follow the money and to go. It's about cryptocurrency, tracing, investigation, and so on. To attack the people, the infrastructure, and the money is the holistic approach that we try to have. Not to work case by case, but to try to have this holistic approach and to make, on a regular basis, blows to these cyber criminals.
Thank you. Peter, let's go back to you for a minute. Finland's often cited as a strong example for cross-sector trust. How do you balance security versus speed, but also how do you talked about the large number of corporations you have, how do you ensure that this threat intelligence is getting to small and medium-sized enterprises and not just your larger corporations or your larger entities?
Yeah. The smaller the company, it's usually more challenging. Of course, the whole issue of intelligence and useful information in terms of preventing cybercrime and also protecting, of course, the data and the computer systems that companies have is a collaboration of multitude of or a plethora of different kind of information. Some being kind of awareness issues or advisories, some technical information, and so on and so on. But one challenge seems to be, at least from my perspective, is that as we have a lot of actors, which is necessary in this field to operate, and they all work for the same end result, at least, which would be a better security situation in the digital domain. But at the same time, all of these efforts, they create a pile of information which can be measured, I don't know, in feet or
Meters.
in meters. And smaller organizations, they can't process all that, all the important. National authorities are providing all sorts of guidances and these kinds of documentation. But essentially, for these companies, it's what matters maybe the most is timely technical information, especially on certain, for example, vulnerabilities or maybe a better word would be design flaws in software. So when these are found, what to do in practice? This is rather important, because that essentially is the protecting element. But that cannot be done easily either, because you need competencies and you need resources, you need people to do that who know how to do and understand the production systems and all these things. So it's usually even that sort of entire operation runs on partnerships. Mm-hmm. So, for example, cybersecurity companies who provide products and services to handle all this. But one thing I think is rather critical overall. It's not necessarily an issue of Finland per se, but to look at essentially the intelligence sharing question as a manufacturing process. The approach, if you really think about it, what is happening from the moment of, for example, recognizing indicators of compromise IOCs, or learning new information about certain threat actors, their modus operandi, or whatever information it is. Essentially, there's a huge amount of data being processed, and I would even argue that this process, until we get to the end, not the end of these tables, but the end of the process where criminal actors are actually sentenced in front of court of law, this is a data. This is a data process. It's a process industry, even. If you really think about it, there is a lot of sort of midterm products on the way, all in all. But it's a process industry, and so the question is, at least the thing that I spent a lot of time thinking about this, that so if in any other sector we have process industry, and now we all know that the planet is not sustainable, so we need a circular economy, so we need to circle things around, we reuse them. Where is our circular element in the cybersecurity industry? Is it really working as well as we are hoping it to do? We do process and transfer and transmit and share a lot of information and intelligence, but do we do it in a process way that actually also the products at the end would benefit the ones who create the data in the first
Let me follow up on that, because you raise a good point. Raphaël, given the enormous amount of data and material that you get, how does your company, how does Palo Alto determine what cyber threat intelligence is share-worthy or actionable? And then also, have you seen threat reporting of recent APT campaigns like Volt, Typhoon, Blackbuster? Has that changed your sector's sharing posture at all?
Well, that 2 questions in a row.
I was going to do
Very
3,
different
so
question.
you got off easy.
Maybe quickly the first one for actionable threat intelligence. Yes, it's a process, and I think it raises a point of automation of threat intelligence from the company's perspective, from a corporate perspective. I don't speak for a governmental agency. Governmental agency can have some time maybe to investigate into a threat actor, to get some knowledge and some data for prosecution after. But when a victim of a cyber attack is facing business disruption and is calling us, and calling more precisely our Unit 42 team, who is the division for incident response and crisis management in Palo Alto Networks, when they call Unit 42, we don't have time to take some days to investigate about the behavior. We have to react quickly. And cybersecurity is also a feedback loop. After we gain some information about the multiple incident cases we had, for example, in 2024, on average, we saw that in 20% of the cases where Unit 42 was called for incident response, in 20% of the cases, the mean time to exfiltrate, it is the metrics for the attacker, not for the defender. The delay, the average delay between the initial infection of the company and the exfiltration of data, for example, the delay is below 1 hour in 20% of the cases, and it's below 24 hours in more than 50% of the cases. So we have to act very quickly. Actionable threat intel means threat intel that can be automated, that can be disseminated, that can be sorted out depending on the age, because the IOCs are expiring very quickly, maybe 2 days, 3 days after an IOC has been generated, maybe it is already expired. It also depends on the reputation of the source, of the feed, of the threat intel feed, and also the classification of the IOC will tell you if you are allowed to share with your partners, with your service provider or not. So everything has to be automated if we want to win the race from the defender side against the attackant. And it's about standardization, automation, and disseminating the threat intel into your IT infrastructure, into your cybersecurity stack as fast as possible.
Thank you.
And
all right.
You had a second question, but
I'm sorry, did you have
what
one?
was it already?
Yeah.
Second question?
Oh, well, they were kind of combined. One was how do you choose what to share, what's actionable, and the other thing is, have the recent spate of APTs increased what you deem as worthy of sharing? Things like Volt, Salt, Flex.
Maybe more or less the same answer. We have to automate it to react faster. And what I saw in the recent evolution of the regulation in European Union, at least, is in the DORA regulation for FSI, DORA. There is interesting chapters. Chapter number 6 is to support threat intel sharing practices. And we also have some regulations in Europe that are quite the opposite because they prevent the companies from sharing very easily.
Well aware.
So things like Salt Typhoon and Blackbuster, which is a threat actor which typically leverage AI to be faster, it is a wake-up call for us. I mean, it is a wake-up call for automation and also using AI to fight AI, using AI to understand the behavior of the threat actor. Even if we don't know the signature, even if we have never seen the malware, we should be able, and we are able with our products, we are able now to detect a bad behavior, an abnormal behavior in the infrastructure, even if the binary file, even if the executable has never been seen before.
Okay. We have about 8.5 or 9 minutes left, and I want to kind of finish up with something that I will probably find fun. I'm not sure my panel will. But I want to bring something up that's somewhat provocative because we have another session, but then we're all going to a reception. We're going to have some wine. Everybody knows cybersecurity solutions are better when we come up with them over wine. So I work for a very well-known cybersecurity expert who co-founded one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world. And he really set people off at RSA last month with a a statement that he made from the main stage. And I'm not saying I agree with this. What I'm looking for is perspective from my panel of experts, and if they choose not to weigh in, from the audience. But he said at RSA that public-private partnerships don't work. He said, we've done them for 20 years, and cybersecurity threats are getting worse. But he put that in the context that public-private partnerships were what industry pushed for 20 years ago to avoid regulation. And he said, we're 20 years in, and it's not working. We got to look at it differently. It's not that public-private partnerships are bad, it's just that it's not enough. So I would like to ask my panelists, those are the willing, I know some of you, I was government for a long time, you're restricted in what you can say, but I'd like to know whether you believe he's right or wrong, and if he's right, how do we come up with a regulatory process that doesn't just become a compliance checklist? Do I have a volunteer? Okay. I'm surprised military guys are always told never volunteer. But okay, go ahead. But quick, you got one or 2 minutes here.
Okay, all right. Let me be quick. I think the person was right and wrong at the same time. Indeed, we've done it for a long time, and it has been developing, and it is developing, but maybe not at the pace of what bad actors and let's say effective long-term solution would require for. So the thought that
so he's right, you said.
In that sense, yeah.
Okay.
But
so how do we do it without pursuing compliance?
It's completely dysfunctional. It's difficult to agree with. But the point is that maybe it's the thing that we have these sort of ways how we think. For example, when we talk about law enforcement, that when there is a criminal, then there is the police, and there you have a fire, then you have the firefighters coming in, and so on. So you have this sort of simplified mental model. And sometimes I think that we do a little bit of the same in cybersecurity, that we don't really respect the fundamentals how cybersecurity is different, because it's essentially and it is always a data problem. So we have to first ask who's the data owner and data controller, who's the one, because this is mostly private property. So we should really appreciate this fact, and hence we should put the data owner in the center, not security agencies and so on. Security agencies and other actors can provide essential, critical support and services and fulfill the other blanks in the industry process that we have to actually fight cyber insecurity or cybercrime, whatever term one wants to use. But the data owner has to be in the center. And then think about how can we build on partnerships in a way that it is effective, first and foremost for prevention, and then those issues, when we fail in prevention, how do we do things so that we sort of specifically not prevent, but we stop the bad actors to actually continue of what they do.
Thank you. General, the question to you is, do public-private partnerships work? And do you agree that they do not, or do you think they should? And if, regardless of your answer, what can we do to increase the resilience, increase compliance, that doesn't just become a compliance checklist where it's an operation of just checking the blocks versus really achieving security?
Well, I was triggered. My reaction was triggered by your first question, and because I think it's the first time that I hear an American asking for more regulation.
I'm not asking for regulation. I'm asking for your opinion on whether public-private partnerships work.
Well, I would say that the dream for some people in our position would be to have a kind of an obligation of reporting from the private company.
Right.
I'm not sure that this will happen one day, but this is my answer.
I think it's a very good answer. Does anyone else on the panel want to answer? Because I'd love to hear something from the audience if anyone has an opinion. Ma'am? Or actually, sorry, Raphael, go ahead.
Very shortly,
You have a
I do
minute and a
believe
half.
that public-private partnerships do work. I do believe it because yes,
Are they enough? Have we solved
No,
cybersecurity?
it's not magic. It won't resolve it won't solve the situation magically. But we would not be able collectively, I think, to act at the same time in prevention and in repression and prosecution if we were not partnership together.
Well, we have no other way.
No.
It's clear for the time being. So maybe it doesn't work optimal, but we have to work like that, and we have to raise the awareness. It's why also we are participating in this kind of panel, to raise the awareness that to the fact that we understand that you need first to respond very quickly, but we need also to have information to be able to work, and then after to prosecute the cyber criminals.
So sir, when we go to our reception later, let's continue this conversation, but if it's not a regulatory framework that we can do for whatever reason, political or otherwise, maybe there's an incentive. What incentive can we have? You know, what role does maybe insurance play in incentivizing reporting mechanisms or better actors by the companies? I don't know the answer. I just ask the questions. And we do have another minute. Would anyone like the last word, ma'am?
I just want to say something very simple. Feel free to share information with justice. I promise we are really welcoming.
And thank you. I like that message. And let me just reiterate that. You know, my background is Department of Justice, and for years, an agency that sometimes we have to remind works for us called the FBI had a really bad reputation when they did cyber responses. That has completely changed. The way that they face victims now is more of a customer service model and a high-end customer service model. And I think it's probably the same with our French counterparts here. But if there are if there are preconceived notions about how something used to be, it might not be the same. So if you are in a position where it's up to you, if you share with the government, I would strongly encourage you to do that. And a breach is probably not the best time for you to meet your prosecutor or her law enforcement agents that work for her. So maybe do that a little bit ahead of time. And with that said, we're out of time. Thank you for my panel, and thank all of you.